US President Barack Obama today warned against Britain leaving the EU, the so-called Brexit. He says the UK has benefited through jobs and commerce by being part of the trade bloc. During his talks with fellow head of state David Cameron, he weighed in on the debate ahead of the EU membership referendum in June. For more on the matter, we're joined by our correspondent Dan Whitehead. A very good evening to you, Dan. President Obama warning that Britain shouldn't leave the EU. What were some of the reasons that he gave?
Well, it was pretty stark warnings from the president. He touched down in London less than 24 hours ago. Within minutes of his plane touching down, an article in the UK's Telegraph newspaper was published. He gave his opinions there, warning that he believed the UK would be better off if it stayed within Europe. And in a press conference in the last couple of hours alongside David Cameron, he ramped up that rhetoric and said that actually if the UK left Europe, when it comes to any form of trade agreements between the UK and the US outside of Europe, that the UK would go to the back of the queue. It's something that might happen somewhere down the line in the future, but it wouldn't be anything that happened anytime soon. And this is a dramatic intervention because one of the main arguments that the people who have been campaigning for a so-called Brexit have been making is that, look, we'll be better off outside of Europe. We can do our own trade agreements with China. We can do our own trade agreements with the US. There's the United States president saying that that would happen a long time down the road, not for certain, and that the UK would go to the back of the queue. He also said that the US likes dealing with a big unity like the European Union, more countries, more opportunities for financial deals. So this will be seen as a major blow for the Vote Leave campaign, with just weeks to go until this referendum.
Dan, that referendum taking place in a few months' time, what's been the public polls like in terms of for and against? And I'm also wondering about what's been reaction now since Obama's speech from ordinary citizens and also from the UK's Prime Minister David Cameron.
Well, let me take that question first then. David Cameron will be incredibly happy at this intervention. We've known that Barack Obama has been vocal about wanting the UK to stay within Europe. He went a step further today and ramped up that rhetoric. So David Cameron and the government, which the official position is from the government that people should vote to stay in Europe, he'll be incredibly happy with the level of intervention which Barack Obama has gone in for. In terms of what the public opinion here in the UK is, it's too early to tell at the moment. Some analysts have said to me that actually the public are wiser to know that this is a US president who in a few months' time will no longer have that position. He's been described by Brexit campaigners in the last few minutes as a lame duck president, and actually he can make what promises he wants to because it won't be him having to fulfil, and actually it will be in the interests of America to have a trade agreement with the UK. Whether or not the British public will look into it in that much detail, or whether or not they will be swayed by Barack Obama, who, to be frank, still holds a lot of power in terms of his words when it comes to the UK. You can see from the reaction from David Cameron that this is one of the most important leaders in the world, and he still carries that gravitas despite him being in his final months of presidency.
Besides the membership debate, what other topics did the two leaders discuss?
It was very broad, actually, and I think that really reflects the fact that this is probably their last meeting, certainly on UK soil, but probably their last meeting with Barack Obama being president. So they discussed counter-terrorism. They also discussed the situation in Libya, the importance of forming a strong unity government there. They discussed, in terms of counter-terrorism, they discussed the rise of Islamic State, but also how the numbers, according to the Prime Minister, of Islamic State fighters now is at its lowest point in 2 years. They also discussed the Panama Papers and the leaks there. The London is hosting an anti-corruption summit next month. Secretary of State John Kerry will be attending that on behalf of the US government. So those were some of the key areas which were also discussed. But be under no illusion, the key focus for the visit of Barack Obama here was to add weight and support behind the Remain campaign, although it must be said that Barack Obama did stress that this is a decision for the UK people and not one for him to influence on. But he has done so.
So President Barack Obama and the First Lady, Michelle Obama, had an opportunity to lunch with the royals. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating pictures to see with Barack Obama and the First Lady arriving in Windsor Castle around 40 minutes from central London by helicopter, being greeted by Her Majesty the Queen along with the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, husband. They were then driven by Prince Philip, who is in his mid-90s, up the drive to the residence. That was an interesting moment, and in fact Barack Obama mentioned that in the press conference, saying that it was a very smooth ride in the 4x4. I'm sure lots of conversations would have been taking place with the US security about the President of the United States being driven by a man in his mid-90s, but he made it there safely. They had an hour's lunch. President Obama gave the Queen, who of course turned 90 yesterday, a photo album, a personalised photo album of her visits with US presidents. So that was the gift which was given by Barack Obama. And the royalty visits continue because now President Barack Obama is dining with the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, Kate and William, alongside Prince Harry at Kensington Palace. So it's a double whammy of royal meals on day one of the visit. Tomorrow he meets with young members of the London community.
Dan, what's next on Obama's itinerary?
Well, as I mentioned, he has this meeting with young groups in London. We understand that he will be talking there about the importance of the special relationship, which was talked a lot about in the press conference, really continuing that special relationship between the UK and the US. So he will be echoing that message with younger members of London tomorrow. And actually then the schedule for Barack Obama is a little vague for the evening. No major formal engagements over Saturday, but it is on Sunday, of course, when he travels to Germany. He'll be seeing the Prime Minister again on Monday, along with other leaders, including the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, for a major summit looking at a broad range of issues on terrorism and so forth, and Libya and the situation going forward. That takes place in Hanover on Monday, so his European tour continues there.
UK correspondent Dan Whitehead talking to us about US President Barack Obama's visit to the UK, warning against Britain leaving the EU, the so-called Brexit.